So much, yeah. It's too much.
Oh.
That's what it is. Yeah, good luck. Yeah, we had a family friend like I don't he retired. I don't know what St. John. I mean, he dogs. I was maybe 15. Just his home to have that one last day to retire. I mean, just nothing but sick time from just that almost 6 months. Like, what? I mean, that's kind of strange. My mom is funny. She's like, at my house, she's a roommate, and my mom is just like, he thinks that the play button. So you just get a toy, and he like jump on, and he just not. I should have asked what's this play button. So, it's like a innovation. I don't want to use it. First movie we had a really back home and she got the bed next to me. I lost it. Not like you looked at it, but she was using. Well, I told the last long sleeve, so they don't think I'm using it. Sorry. Is it stay out of a week or two? They're going to give you 7. And if you don't, stick around. And I thought to myself, they probably would have rather not stay there. I had next year. Yeah, taking some classes this summer, next summer, so I can do it. I get it. Yeah. So they have to you may work yeah. A lot of people probably wait a year or two. I want to get it done before I start taking pictures. I have lots of work. Yeah, it's a lot of work. But I don't want to do it right away after college. I talked about work, like you do this straight out of college. You really know what it means on why learning about it. But like do it after you have some experience. That's okay. I want to do that. I want to pay for it. This I feel that way or not?
Yeah.
That's fun. Said he found pretty good. I don't know. You're weird. I don't think so. No. Yeah. Yes, it is. Very nice. A lot of beer. For an extremely long time. So I'll say 10 years go by, I'm gonna probably hate the suit I bought, or I won't fit in it because I gained weight or lost weight. I'm like, all right, my suit from. The tie looks doesn't look old at all though. What's how old is it? I won't use this even if I'm trying. I want to watch it.
In your pocket. Yes.
Let's start trying.
No one cares.
Even though I can't talk about it.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
You said one on top of my head. They're over there, maybe. Oh, I know where I put them. On my seat. Yeah, I got my little notebook with my notes. Changed my mind. I mean, I'm reading it. I told her I read it to Joanne. It's pretty good, but you miss this. I don't have time to add anything. I said I'm timing. I added that with Marilyn. They say all this speech is 5 to 10. You said all this information. How do you do that? Yeah, I don't know. Just talk about the file. It took 3 minutes, and I timed it at home 10.5 minutes. That kind of cures that one. I'll be honest with you, I still just because I have to read it. You know, when you read it, they're often very robotic and dry. You can't like speak where it doesn't sound like you're reading it. Oh, I know. My problem is crying, I lose my composure, and then I don't know what. Not fun stuff. You guys ever have to do a speech?
You don't want You'll be there about that.
Yeah, but I got
Well, when you pay Southwest.
We do that. Get together tomorrow, and I think we're.
Did you see yourself?
Not me. I'm not saying I'm early, but I'm usually like today, 10:15. We got here at 10:15. These guys, tell us 12, and it's really not going to start till 1. And it works out because then we make it on time. Why not? I even told him, I said, I just sort of do that. You I would prefer to be that way. I think that you are touring, you got no stress. I mean, if you know a half hour drive, you give yourself an hour, you're more than likely not going to be worried because you don't have to speed and like worry about a stoplight, you know? Have you? I definitely did.
You know, I have not. My stomach's a little messed up. I might grab one in a few minutes.
I am the little bit I sometimes for being a vendor, I really start early. It depends on the urgency of what's going on. If you know you have to be somewhere, you need it. It's like not that big of a deal. It's hard to push it. Hello. How are you doing? A little better?
You do? Oh, sweet. Yeah, I worked at preschool.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It was kind of,
Yeah, I mean, that's the insurance guy.
Oh gosh, yeah, Nancy's.
He was telling me, telling me that he had to.
Yeah.
I knew he had, but I didn't know.
Yes.
Unless he's exaggerating. Right.
Just exaggerating.
Yeah,
Because I'm raised by you.
I just took it.
No, what's one thing?
I know. Yeah.
I don't know. He has for like a couple of days. I'm trying to read
Ron Nancy forever. I think we took all
Yeah, one time he,
you wouldn't even have thought. I mean, you're still
leased
the
a white Honda. He was doing that for me. And he let the sun was kind of
Was
down
this
and
the bowling
then
alley?
turned it
Dad
up.
was like,
I think he leased
then I
it.
was talking
about
about
it.
it for you because I couldn't take me off because you would see the door and look for me and Nancy would be like, I don't get that. Yeah, they didn't care. Yeah,
No, I won.
No, we don't own it.
He's good. It's funny because he's 25.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, yeah, no.
Okay, so here's how I'm gonna. Chad and Larry and when we remember that, the mile jazz.
And that's all. This is our birthday. Always been fire. Sometime in all the time. He's much happier.
So they're like babies.
Our house was a
I know, I wish grandma was tall.
So yeah, years ago. Yeah.
He would have played in this guy.
Yeah, it's got a big sign. We take one day times a week. So it's good. I feel like I'm there all the time, preparing something, or taking groceries, or cleaning up something. Dublin. Yeah.
My son's a grandma.
Oh, I live in Grandview. Yeah. It's so funny. I love it. I love it. That's so funny. So it's so fun. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. Grandview's the best. I love Grandview. Never having grandchildren. Right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, he doesn't keep them. Yeah, we have to like tuck that big.
My mom passed away. So we're just starting talking about it. She lives in my parents' house a couple years ago, so they're all there together.
Got a whole bit in there.
Started to kind of get together. That's what she is. And now we're like, Granny, I'm smaller with mom.
It's gonna be starting about 5 minutes. You might wanna-
That's exactly it. Nervous.
Yeah, that's right.
Every time I see you guys, I think the beach. What's up? Yeah, I didn't bring it. So I don't smell that.
Hi, everybody. Hi, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even sleep last night. My legs hurt. My knees hurt.
Okay, forgot that. Well, I
want you to sit on the end so you don't have to triple my legs.
Where were you?
Oh.
Yeah. Well, if I'll do that, I want to just get through it.
Chad, would you like a mint in your mouth to keep it wet? You got napkins.
Over here.
Yeah, that's
You got your phone down.
I guess I'm sitting here too.
Multiple choice.
I heard you were a great school.
He was a great Chad.
Hey, you want water?
I can't be sure.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Not saying anything. Yeah.
How are you?
Yes, we're good there. These are comfortable, I'll never get out.
That's the hard, we need an eject button on those couches.
Hey there, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out today. My name is Jennifer Barlow, and I'm the funeral director here at Rockstone Funeral Home. We are honored to have you all gathered here to celebrate the life and mourn the passing of Ron Soehner, a husband, father, grandfather, brother, and uncle. Bobby Jones once said, "Golf is the closest game to the game we call life. You get bad breaks from good shots, you get good breaks from bad shots, but you have to play the ball where it lies." To the family of Ron, the times ahead of you may seem dark, but let each tournament then shine through. Take each moment for what it is, honor Ron, who he was, and the life he led. For those of you who have come out to support the family, continue to wrap them with your love and support. Embrace them with your grace and patience as they try to navigate this new reality. We will now be hearing from Celebrate Brian Bennett, who will tell Ron's story. Again, folks, thank you all so much for coming out today.
Thanks, Jennifer, and welcome everybody. As we get started, just a brief thing of housekeeping. If you have a cell phone in your purse or pocket, if you can just kind of put that on mute here in silence for the next few moments, that'll help us. Sure enough, we don't say that right in the middle of one of the phones goes off. So, thank you so much for being here. As Jennifer said, it's an honor for me to be here. Unfortunately, I was with some of the family here not too long ago at the passing of Janet, and I understand that with the family itself, there's been just a lot of loss in the last season here, and my heart just breaks for you because it has to feel like as soon as you get your balance, a new loss happens, and it's just so difficult to recover from. I got the privilege to talk to Todd for quite a while, and I told him, my approach to doing a service like this is I truly believe that every life is a story that deserves to be told. And my privilege is to get back and hear the story of somebody that I never had the privilege of knowing. And Todd just did a phenomenal job of painting a picture of his dad for me, and that's the big reason we're here today. We are here to mourn his loss, obviously. But here in the last decade or so, you've heard a difference. You're not hearing the term funeral as much as you're hearing life celebration. And I like that change because it sounds like Ron celebrated his own life. And judging, I got here early and I looked at the pictures and kind of got to hear the vibe. You guys are a little rowdy for a funeral. So I don't know if that reflects Ron's personality, but it sure sounds like it did. Because it sounds like if he was in the room, there was laughter that was going to be shared as well. So it is an absolute privilege to be here. And every service that I do, I share the fact that I'm a big believer that our lives are filled with what I call holy collisions. And what I mean by that is if you think back over the course of your life, there are certain times that you're lucky enough to run into the exact right person at the exact right time of your life for the exact right reason that you were supposed to run into that person. You might be sitting next to one of your holy collisions right now. And you think back to that first moment you met and who made the conversation happen. What did you see in each other that led to the significant relationship that it has turned out to be today? And Ron has had a few of those holy collisions. I understand that a blind date led to love at first sight, kind of ironic. They met in 1964 on a blind date, and I don't have many of the details. It's always funny when I'm talking to a daughter, they know all the details. If I'm talking to a son, they barely know that they even met. I was able to get blind date out of Todd. I don't know anything beyond that. All I know is it sounds like from Ron's story that he was born with a sales gene. And he was able to use it on Nancy. And whatever he did worked because that led to 49 awesome years together. And what's so amazing about that is if they hadn't met on that blind date, if whatever magic hadn't happened, this family wouldn't even exist. And that's part of their story. But after Nancy passed, unfortunately, Ron still had a lot of life to live. A few moments ago, I got to meet her. And I was able to tell her and the family, my mom passed away of cancer about 15 years ago. And then a few years later, my dad introduced Barb to our family. And I consider Barb my bonus mom. And it sounds like these guys are lucky to have a bonus care.
They're great guys.
And just what a great thing, because that's really what makes up the most important part of our lives are those holy collision relationships. Nothing else really matters. And that's why we're here today. No doubt you're here today because somewhere along the line, your path and Ron and Nancy or somewhere in the family, your paths have crossed and that has brought you here today. But let's be honest. When we arrived today, we parked our cars and every one of us had things we're worried about. We have things we're thinking about, decisions we're trying to make. There may be something going on in your life that nobody else in this room is even aware of. And it's going to be waiting for us when we get back in the cars here in a little bit. So my hope and my prayer is that by the time we get back in our cars, we're going to have a little bit better perspective on life and a little bit of Ron's perspective on life. And I believe that's entirely possible by the time that we're done here today. You know, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about grief, and one reading says, I had my own notion of grief. I thought it was a sad time that followed the death of someone you love. You just had to push through, get to the other side. But I'm learning that there is no other side, there is no pushing through, but rather there is absorption, adjustment, and acceptance. And grief is not something you ever complete. You just endure it. Grief is not a task we finish and move on from. It becomes an element of ourselves, an alteration of our being, a new way of seeing things, and a new definition of self. And this family's had to do that a lot over the last few months. And my prayer today is that we can find a way to do that with Ron's story. So before I go any further, if you're comfortable joining me, I'd like to pause for a short word of prayer. Okay, let's pray. God, I thank you for this holy collision of friends and family, people that probably have a kaleidoscope of memories and stories to tell about interactions with Ron and his life over the years. And as we sit here, it's impossible not to think about our circle of influence, the people that are looking at us and how we live life and how we do things and accept good times and hard times. So I pray that by being here together today and sharing in Ron's story, that we can find something that we can immediately put to place in our own lives. So thank you for his life. Thank you for his energy, for his laughter, for his ability to make other people feel important. And I pray that in the next few moments that we have together, that you'll give us comfort that will last well beyond today into the weeks, months, and even years to come. It's in your name we pray these things. Amen. You know, I did not have the privilege of knowing Ron, obviously, but this room was filled, and on the front row are sitting three young men that knew him the best. And the youngest of the three, Chad, is going to come up and share his perspective and his story. So, Chad, come on.
I would like to start by thanking all of you coming out here today to celebrate my father's life. Some of you traveled far distances to be here, like Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, Nevada, California. Todd, Scott, and I are very thankful to you and everyone else from Dayton and other parts of Ohio that are here today. This week, I was approached by a coworker who stopped me to extend his condolences to me. Our conversation led to us talking a little bit about him and his early family life. He had told me that after his mother had died when he was 6 years old, that his father deserted him shortly thereafter. I mean, none of us are guaranteed great parents. I was very lucky. I was very fortunate. My mother was the sweetest and most thoughtful person you could ever meet. My father, Ron, his playful sense of humor and his generous and giving nature were the attributes that I admire most of him. Ron Soehner was born on April 9th, 1943 in Dayton, Ohio. He was the fourth child from the late Paul and Geneva Soehner. During his child and young adulthood, he lived first at Stony Hollow and then moved to Siegenthaler. Dad graduated from Colonel White, I believe, in 1961. I forgot to ask. In the attendance here, I wanted to point out that all three of Dad's sisters are here. Margie from Dayton, Barbara from Carson City, and Aunt Davy from the villages of Florida. Earlier in the year, our family lost another great man, Dad's older brother, Paul. Dad had a lot of great siblings, all of them. They were very, very close. In 1964, as you stated earlier, Dad met on a blind date Nancy Lewis. Obviously, the immediate chemistry that they had led to them tying the knot after 7 short months together. Eventually, they had 3 sons, Todd in 1966, Scott in 1970, and myself in 1972. The thing I remember most of my childhood was my parents' focus on maintaining close family ties with both sides of the family. I think Scott was talking about this last night when we were talking to Uncle Chris, that almost every weekend we went to Tip City to visit Grandma and Grandpa. Uncle Chris would always take us outside, and he would hit balls, and we would play. We'd catch the fly balls on Ashford, is where they live. My mother would always be in the kitchen with Grandma, assisting her with cooking delicious foods or chatting away at the kitchen table. And my father and Grandpa Buck were always parked in the family room, where they were always laughing and watching sporting events together. My father lost his dad at an early age. He was, I believe, 20. This was in 1964, so it would have happened right before he turned 21. So his relationship with his father-in-law was very, very special and meaningful to him. As for Dad's side of the family, one of the memories that I remember the most is going to Uncle Paul and Aunt Joanne's house on the big hill on Wilmington Pike. I think the thing that I remember the most, no one knew how to laugh better than Dad and Uncle Paul. I was pretty young back then. I mean, I don't totally always understand what they were saying, but their laughter was so infectious, though. It just made you laugh with them. They really enjoyed each other's company. Dad became a chemical sales rep for Hinkle. I think it was Parker Amperum at first, in the late 1970s before retiring in June of 2000. Dad loved his job all the way up to the last few years of working there. The technology world was taking over, and Dad wanted no part of that. As I thought recently, being June as it is, Dad retired in June of 2000, so the end of 23 mark. That's pretty impressive. In retirement, Dad enjoyed himself by joining many golf and bowling leagues and traveling with Mom on many vacations. For about 5 years or so, I'm thinking Todd and Julia and Joanna and I, we joined their bowling league, and it was a lot of fun. This league included friends of our parents that are here today, the Hackeys and the Kaufmans, Great Branscombe, and the Durkins. I don't know if the Durkins are ready, they weren't able to make it. But these were very fun times. We really enjoyed them thoroughly. Mom and Dad in 2005, they bought a Marriott timeshare, which me and Todd owned today. Dad gave to us a few years back. Very generous of them. They always invited Scott, Todd, and I to any vacation we wanted to go to. I pretty much took them up on their offer every single year. Free vacation. We took 7 trips with Mom and Dad to Orlando, and then we took 6 more additional ones with Dad. Todd joined us on a few. He had work down there at the time, and we loved it down there. Joanna and I have talked about some of our fondest memories of Mom and Dad are there. Mom passed away in 2014, just 3 months short of their reaching their 50 years of marriage. Losing Mom was obviously hard on all of us, but hardest on Dad. Up to this point, my father was always very jovial, joking around with us. But after Mom passed, his personality changed a lot, at least in my opinion. I just didn't feel like the sense of humor was there much, at least not as much. He just had an extreme sadness, I felt. Fast forward spring break 2016, Joanna, Adam, and I wanted to go visit him. We have. Dad had just moved down to the Villages. He's down there with Aunt Nevy and Uncle Tim and the Durkins and playing lots of golf, and was very happy. And we were thrilled to know that. When we got there real late, and our visit was real short the first night, and we just pretty much went to bed. But the next morning, and something that always stood out to me was that I woke up, I came out of the door, bedroom door, and he was talking to someone, and I don't know who he was talking to, but he was laughing. He sounded like the old Dad that I remember. He seemed like the one that was missing for a while. And he was really enjoying this conversation. And he finally turned around and he made eye contact with me, and he said to the person on the other side of the phone, Chad? Chad is up. I'm going to go ahead and talk to you later, sweetie. I love you. I was very confused. I remember saying, Dad, who the hell are you talking to? Dad responded proudly, that was my girlfriend. In addition to all the help you gave our father these last 8 months while dealing with the illness, Carol, and Todd and Scott have talked about it many times. You have been nothing but the greatest partner for my dad since my mom's passed, and we thank you so much. Anyone who knows my dad well enough knows of his recent history with automobiles. Talking to Aunt Nevy Monday, we estimated we bought 18 to 22 cars since 2014. I think that's a low number because after talking to Carol's son-in-law, who does Dad's insurances, he thinks he did 10 in the last 2 years.
Dad couldn't get enough cars. Dad, of course, loved certain television shows. He did like 90 Day Fiance. He liked Price is Right, Scott. But I think his main focus when watching TV, and he had to unfortunately do a lot of it towards the end, is he watched a lot of car shows. He liked them, fixing old cars up. He loved that. He also subscribed, or at least at one point subscribed to car magazines. He visited car dealerships all the time. Especially Loop Road regularly. In fact, we did go a couple times towards the end. And I think other people have said that, it's just where he wanted to be. He loves cars. He always was in a search for a new vehicle. Cars were such a great joy for Dad. For me, though, what I enjoy most of Dad's constant buying of new vehicles was sharing this information with my brothers. I could call Todd or Scott, and the conversation would be something like this. I would say, "Have you heard the great news?" And they would say, "What?" And I'd say, "Dad bought another car." And they'd be like, "Are you kidding me?" What can you say, though? He loved his car. I'm glad, though. I'm really glad he spoiled himself. That was important, though. He had the money, and he spent it on some things he loved, and that was one of them. One of the biggest joys in my dad's life is obviously being a grandfather of 4. Madison was born in 96, Nick 98, Jack 02, and Adam 08. Grandpa always wanted to spend time with them. He looked forward to all of our family gatherings. So he could have them over and they all be by his side. He had his 80th birthday in April, and it really meant a lot to us. We took some pictures, and it was a really good time. Glad that we were able to share those times with him. Dad, as we all know, he received unfortunate news in November of 2022 that he had blood cancer. His chemotherapy and regular weekly transfusions started immediately. Dad was a warrior. With all the doctor visits in the hospitals, all the stuff he had to do, it was just so much he had to endure. He never complained, though. He just really didn't complain. He was so concerned mostly about making sure that we were okay. And he was always so complimentary about how much time we spent, helping him out. He just his focus was more on the gratitude of us helping him. I think we did enjoy his dad's humor, though, when we took him for the blood transfusion. He always teased the nurses there at the Kettering Care Center. He got a big kick out of it. We'd pick him up sometimes, you'd think he'd have no energy, and then he goes there, and he just turned it on. He was absolutely ready to give some teasing there. It was fun. I do want to thank everyone who visited Dad the last 8 months. I know he went to a lot of places. He was obviously in Columbus, Kettering multiple times. He went to Miami Valley. He received a lot of visitors. I do want to say to one person that, Aunt Margie, you showed up as much as anybody. And you were very special to Mike. And you also was his favorite gambling partner. I really enjoyed that.
I
That's the part I don't really like. But to Scott, Todd, and Carol, we did the best we could. We kept him here as long as we could. In closing, as we all say to you today, Papa, it is comforting to know your other loved ones, including Mom, are in heaven about to welcome you.
agree. Chad did just a phenomenal job. I'm the oldest of three boys myself, and whenever you turn it over to the youngest, it's a little nerve-wracking. Scott was leaning forward like, I'm gonna take you out. Just absolutely beautiful job of honoring your dad. And it looks like the sense of humor in the family is passed on. You know, our lives are filled with good moments, hard moments, and some of what I would call even defining moments. You know, a defining moment to me, or your life's kind of cruising along pretty well, and all of a sudden out of the blue, wham, something happens and it rocks you. And you're left in the aftermath kind of trying to figure that out. We've shared some of those defining moments as a nation. You know, my grandparents can remember where they were and what they were doing and how it felt when they learned that Pearl Harbor had been attacked. I remember asking my mom and dad, where were they and what did it feel like when they heard that our young President Kennedy had been assassinated? And they knew immediately. I remember being in college, and I was a baseball player and getting ready to go to practice, and I was casually standing behind my couch eating a sandwich, and I had the TV on because that day they were going to launch the Shuttle Challenger. And we had taken space travel for granted, but that one was a big one because we had a civilian, a teacher, that was aboard, and a pretty big deal was made of it. I remember I had a few teachers I wouldn't mind shooting into space myself. I was watching and very casual about it, eating my sandwich, and I can remember in my mind's eye right now that crystal blue sky, much like today, and seeing that first plume of smoke go up, and then out of nowhere, seeing 3 trails of smoke. But what I remember is they took the cameras and they swung over to the chain link where all the immediate family and spectators were watching. And without anybody planning it, many of them within the camera view were looking up in the sky, and they all said at exactly the same time, the same way, "Oh my God." You know, as human beings, when a defining moment happens, we react one of 2 ways. We either turn to God or we blame Him. I used to think that one was right and one was wrong, but I don't think that anymore. I think the most important thing to do is to be you. And grief is much the same way. When I was talking to Todd, I was most interested in learning about how Ron faced some of those defining moments. What was he like then when there were no jokes to tell him? And he told me, he said, when his girlfriend, when his wife of 49 years got sick, he was there. He was her caregiver. He put his marriage vows, it meant what they said. I got to hear stories throughout his life of when people needed things. If he had the money, the time, or the resources to help, he was the first one to be able to step in and help out. He was that kind of guy. I asked him how much he loved being a grandpa. And I heard he was called Pa or Paparoni and loved that role in his life. He just sounded like a phenomenal person, whether things were going well or whether it was a defining moment that he had to handle. To me, that paints the biggest picture of all of who he was. You said at the very end, Chad, and I believe this with everything that I was a pastor for 25 years. I started my own business 15 years ago. I haven't gone to church for the last 10 years myself. I just needed to separate all that out. And I know the way that we do math in America is if you're a believer, you go to church, and if you go to church, you get to go to heaven. I've read the Bible probably 100 times. It doesn't say that in there anywhere. And I'm here to tell you with everything that I believe about this man, the way that he lived his life, the way that he raised his family, the way that he honored his wife, if he's not in heaven, we're all in trouble. I absolutely believe that he's there right now. I don't know how it works. I don't know where it is. I don't know what it looks like, but I believe in everything in me that the part that makes us who we are goes on to a second chapter, and he's getting to enjoy that chapter today. So, as I close today, I want to share a reading, one of the most powerful things I've ever run across, and I hope that it honors the life and the energy that Ron brought to his life. It was a speech given by Anna Quinlan to a group of graduates at Villanova University one afternoon. And she had this to say: "You walk out of here today with the one thing that no one else has. There will be hundreds of people out there with your same degree. There will be thousands of people that do what you do for a living. But you will be the only person alive who has sole custody of your life, your particular life, your entire life. Not just your life at a desk or your life on a bus or in a car or at the computer. Not just the life of your mind, but the life of your heart. Not just your bank account, but your soul." People these days don't talk about the soul very much anymore because it's much easier to write a resume than it is to craft a spirit. But a resume is a cold comfort on a winter night, or when you're sad or broke or lonely, or when you've gotten back the test results and they're not so good. So she said, "Here's my resume. I try to be a good parent to my 3 kids. I've tried never to let my profession stand in the way of being a good parent. I no longer consider myself the center of the universe. I show up, I listen, and I try to laugh. I'm a good friend to my spouse. I've tried to make my marriage vows mean what they say. I show up, I listen, and I try to laugh. I'm a good friend to my friend, and they are to me. Without them, there would be nothing to say to you today because I would simply be a cardboard cutout. But I call them on the phone when I can. I meet them for lunch. I show up, I listen, and I try to laugh. I would be rotten or at best mediocre at my work if those other things were not true, because you cannot really be first rate at your work if your work is all you are." So here's what I wanted to tell you today. And I have a feeling that if Ron were able to be standing where I'm standing right now, he would give us the same advice. Get a life. A real life. Not just a man in pursuit of the next promotion or a bigger paycheck or a larger house. You think you care so very much about those things if you blew an aneurysm one afternoon or found a lump in your breast. Get a life in which you're not alone. Find people that you can love and people that will love you back. And remember that love is not leisure, it is really hard work. So pick up the phone, send an email, write a letter, kiss your mom, hug your dad. Get a life in which you were generous and realize that life is the best thing ever and we have no business taking it for granted. She said, "I learned this many years ago because something really bad happened to me, something that if I had my choice would have never happened at all, but it has taught me the biggest lesson of my life. I learned to love the journey and not the destination. I learned that life is not a dress rehearsal. Today is really the only guarantee we get." So I try to tell everybody this advice. Consider the lilies of the field. Take the time to look at the fuzz on the back of a baby's ear. Read a book in the backyard with the sun shining in your face. Buy a car, maybe.
He did.
And learn to be happy. And think of life as a terminal illness, because if you do, you will live it with joy and passion, exactly as it ought to be lived. And it sounds to me like this gentleman lived his life the way that it ought to be lived. And you're all blessed because of it. Thank you so much for allowing Jennifer and I to be part of your family, this holy collision today. I'd like to close my time with a word of prayer, and I'll turn it back over to Jennifer. God, I thank you for Ron, his story, his energy, what he's obviously passed down to these 3 young men and their families. And that just tells me that his legacy is going to live far beyond this year. That when there are generations that aren't even here yet, they're going to be able to hear about Ron and what he meant, and maybe tell the jokes over that he liked to tell over and over again, and all the stories and all the pictures, because he was such a huge part of this circle of people. So thank you for letting us call time out in our busy lives to make you think about what's important and what will pass on beyond us. It's in your name we pray these things. Amen.
Thank you all so much for coming out today to honor the life of Ron. This does conclude the services here at the funeral home. If you are going to the cemetery with us, we are going into session, so be sure that you have a flag on your vehicle, your 4-way flashers, and your night headlights are on. We will be leaving here shortly. If you are a pallbearer, please meet us out in the lobby before you leave for further instructions. And we will now begin dismissing from the back for folks to have their final pass to the air condolences. Again, folks, thank you all so much for coming out today.